So, yes, I'm aware that this video is more than a week late. I was really busy all last week, and then No Time to Die came out, and I'm catching up on a bunch of other things. So, now I might as well just do it. Might as well just do this video right now. So, welcome to my spoiler video for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. There is a lot to talk about with this movie that I really couldn't go into depth with this movie. And before I begin with my in-depth review, I kind of want to change out of this shirt first, if you don't mind, okay? There we go. So, and I'll talk about this towards the end of the video. So, yeah. So, Venom 2 pretty much opens up with a backstory of Cletus Cassidy and Francis Barrison, who would later become Shriek. They both had traumatizing, they're both traumatized from their past, and, you know, they're both horrible people. So, of course, they naturally bond with each other. Yeah, great. And during this whole thing, Frances is about to be taken to Ravencroft, and she winds up getting taken away, and during it, she tries to escape, she screams, and the cop shoots her in the eye, and that's why she has the eye that she does. And, you know, the cop actually believes that she's actually dead, when in reality, she's not. She's over at Ravencroft. There's just more security because of how powerful her screams are. And to that I'm thinking, you know, how does that cop not know that she's still alive? That just does not make sense to me. Like, I feel like he would know that she is actually still alive, but oh well, movie's got a movie, I guess. I don't get it. And as far as like their relationship goes, I feel like throughout the entire movie we never really get a sense of like what their relationship is like. Instead, we have this whole, you know, they bond because they're traumatized and they're killers. That's it. I felt nothing. It was like a lesser version of Harley Quinn and Joker. And I never thought I would say that. It's kind of upsetting, actually. So, anyway, let's move on to Eddie. And Eddie, what's he up to this time? Well, throughout this entire, like, at least the first third of this movie, he's interviewing Cletus, who's now in jail, which, how is he not locked up just the same as, you know, as Shriek? Like, it just doesn't really make sense, since he's probably even more dangerous. I don't know why. But anyway, he's been interviewing him since, you know, the end of the first movie, when you saw that post-credit scene where it's like, hey, when I get out of here, it's going to be Carnage. And it's like, yeah, I hope so. I hope it's better than this first movie. Anyway, Eddie is interviewing him, and Venom is just really getting on Eddie's nerves. Why? Because Venom doesn't really like a lot of things that he doesn't like a lot of Eddie's rules. Obviously, don't eat people. And instead of eating heads, he has to eat chickens and chocolate, which just isn't enough for Venom. Also, he wants to get more in depth with the whole, you know, Cletus Cassidy situation. And Eddie's holding back, of course, and obviously Venom wants to eat heads. He wants to eat brains specifically. And, you know, for a while, it's fine, I guess. Like, Venom and Eddie were the best part of the first movie. And here, for a while, it's entertaining, but because there's a lot more screen time between them, unfortunately, it becomes more annoying. Like, you know, Andy Serkis mentioned something about, you know, how he wanted to, like, emulate The Odd Couple in a way. And for a while, it kind of worked. It's like, yeah, they are very different. They are kind of like an odd couple in a way. But after a while, they just get extremely annoying. Like, Venom becomes extremely annoying in this movie to me. I don't know why. Is it because of the more screen time? Or, I don't know. Which is weird because this movie's a lot shorter than the first Venom movie, so I really don't know. Anyway, Venom has an idea. He draws like a map. He kind of like Cletus gives Eddie hints of like where his bodies are, but Eddie doesn't understand. Venom does, because of course he does. And so that leads to, you know, them finding all of Cletus Cassidy's missing victims' bodies. And so now Cletus Cassidy is about to go on death row. Yay. And during all this, you know, Michelle Williams returns as Anne in this one, and she mentions to Eddie, hey, I'm engaged. I'm engaged to Dr. Dan. And Eddie's clearly upset, but Venom, again, being annoying, he's like, I miss her. And it's like, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it just ruins the tone of this scene. I just feel like I'm okay with Eddie kind of being remorseful, and if Venom was actually a little bit more remorseful and a little more serious about the situation, it would have been an effective scene. Instead, it's just kind of, there's just awkward comedy in there. It just doesn't really work for me. So anyway, Cassidy's about to be executed, and he's upset with Eddie because he published his stories, which he published his stories in the newspaper, and I'm like, that makes no sense because you knew what he was doing. Didn't you, Cletus Cassidy? You knew exactly what he was doing this whole time. He was interviewing you. You knew he was a journalist. You knew he was this investigative journalist. So why are you upset that he published it? Like, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, you know, you saw in the trailer, Cletus bites Eddie, and Cletus is like, that is not blood. That is not blood. I've tasted blood. That isn't it. What is wrong with you, man? So anyway, right before he's executed, of course, and right in front of the victims of right in front of the families of the victims that he's killed, he starts transforming into Carnage. And here's a scene that, here's something like morbidly dark that I kind of wish would happen if this movie was rated R. Like, I kind of wish they kind of went further with that whole thing. It was like, he turns into Carnage immediately in front of the victims. It's like, you could clearly tell, again, just like the first movie, that they clearly want to be an R-rated movie, and yet they can't because they're held back by this PG-13 rating, and the movie was successful despite a PG-13 rating. Oh well. So anyway, Cletus turns into Carnage, and he has this whole prison escape, which isn't really as impressive as it was in the trailer, because you kind of see most of it in the trailer already, so there's like nothing really new, nothing really exciting. The only really fun bit in the whole escape scene is when he's like in this fight with the Warden, and he mimics the Warden's last words, you know, any last words before Carnage bites his head off. And so they escape, and now their plan is to go get Shriek. Anyway, moving on from that, yeah, I'll get to their plan, which honestly just did not feel that interesting. Anyway, Eddie and Venom's really upset with Eddie over everything, basically, mainly the whole, you know, I can't eat brains thing. And Eddie's like, I don't want to eat brains. But it just, again, after a while, it just gets really annoying. So, of course, they split up for a bit. Venom goes on his own. Eddie returns to some form of normalcy. Whatever can be normal at this point for him. Anyway, Venom just moves on from person to person. And eventually he ends up at a rave. Again, it's just, I didn't care for the rave scene. I was more laughing at just how ridiculous it was, rather than laughing at anything that was actually said. Just the concept of him at a rave is just ridiculous to me. I don't know why, it just is. Anyway, let's move on to Cassidy. He goes on with his evil plan, now as Carnage. He tries to go save Shriek. He winds up killing one of the doctors in that scene, which I thought that scene was really cool. It's like, that was really dark, and I was like, that's kind of another moment where I feel like this movie should have been pushed to be an R rating. Like, this would have been a perfect R-rated Venom movie, and it should have been. I still think it would have been successful if it was rated R, but oh well. Anyway, he breaks out Shriek, and automatically you kind of get the sense that this whole relationship is not going to work out the way they think. Because obviously you know that like characters like Venom and Carnage, they don't like sound. And yet Shriek is the loudest screamer ever. So, and I thought immediately, wait, how is this relationship going to work? And they do address that, definitely. But, like, she starts screaming, and that's when, you know, Carnage just does that thing where he's, like, trying to escape from Cletus, and Carnage shuts her up, basically. And honestly, also, let's get into their big plan. Their plan is not that interesting. They're just going to get married. And they're also going to get revenge. They're going to get revenge on, Shriek wants to get revenge on the cop who shot her eye out. And Cassidy is going to get revenge on Eddie for revealing the bodies of his victims. But again, dude, that just makes no sense. You knew what he was doing. You knew. Anyway, so anyway, let's get back to the whole Eddie storyline. The cop who was, you know, kind of investigating this whole thing, who's kind of helps Eddie at various points throughout the movie, he basically interrogates him at one point and what his connection to Cletus Cassidy is. Again, you know what his connection is, but, you know, since he escaped, I guess that, you know, that just, and you're the last person to see him, so we gotta investigate this whole thing. And since Venom is not there with him, can't really defend himself in a way. But anyway, he calls Anne to be his lawyer, And Anne has the symbiote with him. She has Venom, and she breaks him out. We get to see She-Venom again, which is really awesome. I really like that She's Venom moment in Venom 1. And here, I do like it, but again, visually, it just didn't impress me too much, unfortunately. I would like to see more of that. Also, they do kind of explain a little bit more about the whole transferring, how Venom transfers from people to people. You definitely see it in the first movie. But remember how in the first movie, Anne was looking at a cat and all of a sudden she's like, huh, that's Venom. And the next thing you know, she has the Venom symbiote. She-Venom's like, how? Why? I don't want to know. Anyway, here it makes more sense because Venom has taken over Mrs. Chen, the bodega owner from the first movie. They give Mrs. Chen a lot more to do in this movie, and I kind of like that, surprisingly. It's like, oh, she was just a throwaway character in the first movie. No, she's actually more of a character in this one. But anyway, also kind of part of the fact that, Venom is taking over for her, so it's really more Venom. Oh well. Anyway, Eddie and Anne kiss, Eddie and Venom make up. You could say Eddie and Venom kiss, but whatever. Eddie and Venom reunite, and, that's when, Cassidy kidnaps the cop, Shriek kidnaps Anne, and I kind of like the Shriek and Anne moment more than the cop moment. And, Anne and Shriek are kind of like one-upping each other. That was actually kind of cool. And Dr. Dan is in the scene. Again, Dr. Dan was kind of a throwaway character in the first movie. Here, he's actually a lot better. He actually is not necessarily... He doesn't really like Eddie, but he's at least sympathetic. He's helpful. He tells Eddie and Venom where Anne has been kidnapped to, and he actually helps in the final fight between all of them. It was actually a lot of fun in the theater for me. I enjoyed that. But other than that, okay. So anyway, they're at the wedding. Anne has been kidnapped. The cop has been kidnapped. And Eddie and Venom just show up at the big wedding. And before they could get married, this whole thing is about a marriage. Yeah, their big plan is just getting married and just killing the people who put them away. Even though they're not really the people at fault here. Like Shriek and the cop, it's just because, he tried to kill her. Even though she was already basically in jail. And the whole, Eddie and Venom plot and Cletus Cassidy. You knew, dude. You knew what you were doing. It just doesn't make sense. It just reminds me of the Beetlejuice wedding, for crying out loud. Not in, style, but just, it's supposed to be, the big climactic moment, but there were more stakes in Beetlejuice. And that movie was funny on purpose. But anyway, Venom shows up at the wedding. Carnage is too strong. Venom, you see in the trailer, he's like, oh no, and kind of hides. Like, no, that's a red one. And Eddie's like, I'll let you eat everybody. So that encourages Venom to fight. And they have this big fight. Carnage is too powerful. And during all this, Venom saves Anne. And because of that, Shriek just screams so loudly that the church actually falls and she's killed by a giant bell. You really had to steal from Coco from that one? Okay. Whatever. Anyway, eventually, because of the whole shrieking, Carnage and Cletus are not bonding anymore. Eddie and Venom are tearing apart at the moment. But at least Venom saves Eddie before he could die. And Carnage and Cletus are just not bonding very well, which is something that Venom noticed, which I thought was a nice touch. Cassidy pleads for his life. You see in the movie, he's like, Eddie, I thought we were like brothers. We were like family. And then Venom destroys Carnage, eats Cletus Cassidy's head, uses their one F-bomb, which I thought was perfect. Fuck this guy. So that was perfect. Eddie, Venom, Anne, and Dan all escape because now they're criminals, mainly Eddie and Venom. And then you kind of see the cop who was at one point, kidnapped. He has glowing blue eyes. I guess he's going to be Toxin now. Cool. And here's kind of the part of the problem I didn't want to talk about with this. I felt that both, Carnage and Shriek were just underutilized in this movie. They just didn't really have any interesting thing to do. And I feel like, especially for Carnage, I feel like Carnage should have been a much powerful character than he actually was. I just didn't feel anything for this character. I just kind of felt like it was just some generic villain, not Carnage. So it just... Again, this would have been amazing if it was rated R. I kind of just want Venom to be rated R. If Venom is never in the MCU at any point, and I'll talk about that, they should just remake Venom at some point. Make it R-rated. It's worked for Deadpool. It worked for Logan. Why not? So, anyway, afterwards, afterwards, Venom and Eddie just go on vacation. They're bonding. It's like, oh, it's nice and fun. And then the credits roll for a bit. And then we get to that mid-credit scene, which is a big one. They're kind of bonding again in their hotel room. And then all of a sudden they see this bright white light flash. And they're in the same hotel room, but not really. Because they're now in the MCU. Yeah. They're in the MCU and they see on the TV J. Jonah Jameson is there. J.K. Simmons is there again saying Peter Parker is the identity of Spider-Man. Or, no, first, strike that, reverse it. Peter Parker is Spider-Man, yeah. And so Venom's like, I gotta go after this, before realizing that they're in someone else's hotel room, and that's just how the movie ends. That's just how it ends. There's a lot that I want to talk about with that ending. Because, first off, they've kind of been hinting at that for years, and I kind of thought there's really no point, because Spider-Man is with the MCU, and all these other characters, like, take Venom and Morbius, they're kind of just in their own universe, I guess. Although they kind of alluded to that with Michael Keaton in the Morbius trailer, but whatever. And I don't know what they'll do next, because Tom Hardy has not been confirmed for Spider-Man No Way Home. I don't know what they'll do for Venom 3 now. And honestly, even though this twist is amazing and incredible, and I'm surprised they kept this hidden for so long, it makes the entire movie just pointless. If anything, I kind of want them to do a few things with Venom 3 if Venom and Eddie stay in the MCU in some way. So first off, make Carnage and Shriek better characters this time. MCU's kind of been on a roll with decent villains for the most part, Killmonger, Hela, Thanos, and other than that, I kind of feel like they could do better in the MCU. I feel like we could have darker villains. Well, maybe not darker, because, again, it's going to be PG-13. Maybe they could just throw them in there. It's like, oh, they're different versions of this, kind of like what they might do with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in No Way Home. We'll see. Also, you could have, since Anna's engaged to Dan in the Venom universe, maybe you could have Eddie try to find Anne in this universe, see if she's still engaged. There's a lot you could do with this. But, again, this ending, as cool as it is, just makes everything pointless. Like, what's the point of all these interactions? What's the point of teasing this new superhero played by, what's the point of Toxin in this movie? What's the point of all this happening? Like, what's the point of this if you're just going to do this twist ending that isn't really that surprising? Once it's out there, everyone knows. So, honestly, there is... And I kind of going to reiterate what I said in my Venom review. If you loved the first Venom movie, you're going to enjoy Venom 2. If you didn't care for the first Venom, you're not going to care for this one. Kind of like me. So, I'm still going to stand by my rating for this movie. Again, I feel like this movie could have benefited if it was an R-rated movie. I feel like some of the characters just were wasted opportunities, particularly Woody Harrelson and Naomi Harris. And even with that twist, which is, well done and leaves me wanting more, I'm just like, everything about this didn't matter. Nothing about Venom 2 mattered. And I kind of wanted it to matter. Maybe it can, if they just do something else in this universe. I don't know. So, those are my thoughts on Venom 2 with spoilers. Comment down below, subscribe. What'd you think of Venom 2? You can spoil away. I'm going to try to do my No Time to Die spoiler tomorrow, maybe. So, what'd you think? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and stay safe.